Ladies and gentlemen, if I can get your attention, I would like to tell you that we're very grateful that you would attend this press conference today. We've got the gentleman that has been leading this battle for 12 years, Senator Bob Graham, will be speaking as well. But let me tell you the order of the talk today. I'll make a brief comments after I welcome you, which I'm doing now. Then I will introduce Stephen Lynch from Massachusetts, who joined me last year in a House resolution that we put in to call on the White House to declassify these 28 pages. He and I dropped the same resolution yesterday, but we don't have a bill number because so many bills were introduced. Then we have from the families who have suffered so much pain, Terry Strada, Sylvia Carter, and Adam Scott. After everyone, Abraham, excuse me, thank you. Abraham Scott. And then after they speak, we will then take questions from the press. At that time, please identify who you are and who you're with. First, my brief comments will be that just like the tragedy in France today, no nation can defend itself unless the nation knows the truth, and especially when there's been an attack like 9/11. The families and their pain is something none of us can experience unless we're one of the 9/11 families. So with that, I'm going to introduce Stephen Lynch, then I will come back and introduce Senator Bob Graham. And then the family members will speak, and then you'll have your chance to ask questions. Stephen Lynch and I bonded as friends long before this issue of the 28 pages. I am a conservative Republican from North Carolina. He is more moderate from Massachusetts and Democrat. And we became friends just because I think God intended that we would be friends, quite frankly. So with that, again, Stephen and Thomas Massey, who cannot be with us today, is also on this House resolution calling on the administration to declassify the 28 pages. So I will let Stephen speak now, then I'll come back and introduce Senator Bob Graham. Stephen, come ahead and tell the people why we need to declassify the 28 pages.
Thank you very much, Walter, for that very generous and kind introduction. First of all, I want to thank the 9/11 families for being with us this morning. They are really the reason we are here. And we're introducing our measure resolution from last year to require the declassification of the 28-page section of the joint congressional inquiry into the intelligence activities before and after the terrorist attacks of September of 2001. Congressman Jones and I jointly introduced this resolution back in December of 2013, and we are pleased to do so again. I'd like to begin by thanking my colleague, Walter Jones, for his leadership on this issue. He has been relentless, which I think is what it's going to take to get these pages declassified. And he's really provided, I think, a dignified and well thought out approach for the reasons behind our request. I'd also like to acknowledge Senator Bob Graham, again, who was the catalyst for this effort. And really, I think, before anyone, recognized the rightness of disclosing these 28 pages when the joint report first came out and making these public. There are three basic reasons for our request here. First is that transparency is a good aspect of democracy, and that as Walter indicated, having an informed public from the beginning of our government has always been a major priority and an asset of democracy. And we believe that transparency in this case will not only be the right thing to do, but secondly, it will provide justice for a lot of the families, for all of the families who are affected directly. And we all we all suffered a deep and personal, profound loss, but these families who will speak later on at this conference will speak to the true pain that they feel each and every day. And they are deserving of the truth, just as the American people are. And thirdly, I think after reading the 28 pages, and the pages speak for themselves, I think that members of the Congress and American citizens everywhere will be better informed in terms of our national security posture and the threats that are out there. I think they will be better informed, more thoughtful, more comprehensive, and we will understand more fully the nature of the threat that's out there. And I think that again is one more reason to make sure that these reports are made public. So with that, I just want to say again that we are deeply grateful that Senator Graham was able to join us today. He has provided much impetus for this investigation. He has kept this going. As I said before, he was the first one to recognize the wrongfulness in terms of concealing this from the American public. And it's one important point I want to emphasize is that we frequently see reports. I'm in the process of reading a 6,700-page report on the CIA enhanced interrogation process. And it is typical to see a redaction where a couple lines or a name of a country, name of a CIA agent might be deleted for the purpose of protecting that individual. But in this case, this report, this joint report, 28 pages were excised, a whole section of it. That's extraordinary. And it points to the need for disclosing that information in order to make sure that that report is fully understood. I think Walter and I and the senator agree that this is very important information to have out there, and that we jointly feel, as well as Representative Massey, that this presents no risk to sources or individuals in terms of disclosing this for our intelligence apparatus. We feel that, on the other hand, this will make us stronger, make our country stronger and better prepared and better informed if we disclose this information as we rightly should. So with that, I'm going to turn this back over to Walter Jones so that he can introduce the esteemed senator. Thank you.
I want to, after I make my comments about Senator Graham, I'd like for Terry Strada to come first, Sylvia Carter to come second, and then Abraham third. And then if you would stand here, or if you need to sit, so that when we get to the questions. I want to remind you that after this report came out, it was the Bush administration that determined that these 28 pages should be classified. And as Stephen said, we've read the report, and there's nothing about national security. I'm going to let Senator Graham speak in detail about his concern about why this has not been released. Let me remind you that Senator Bob Graham spent 18 years in the Senate. He's a man that has the nation's respect for the type of person that he is. He and Senator Shelby released the joint inquiry report into 9/11 in December of 2002. Again, the report goes to the White House for final review. The White House at that time, under George Bush, decided that the 28 pages should be classified. The families have suffered long enough. The American people have been denied the truth long enough. It is time for the truth to come out. It is time for the truth to come out. As Stephen said, I want to thank Senator Bob Graham. He had a daughter who was sworn in to the United States House of Representatives yesterday, and congratulations on that, Senator. With that, a man who has driven this issue since 2002. I'm not even going to begin to tell you what he has done, from court action to other types of action, because he knows that the truth will set America free. So with that, I introduce the esteemed Senator from Florida, Bob Graham. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I too want to thank Walter and Steve, Congressman Jones and Lynch, for their leadership in bringing this matter to the attention of the Congress. I want to thank the family members who have been, without question, the most influential force in all of the changes that have occurred as a result of 9/11, and will be the most significant force in terms of convincing the President that it is time to give the American people the truth. Needless to say, my remarks that I will spouse this morning are considerably different than they would have been but for events in Paris this morning, which in my judgment bring this matter into its proper focus. But first, a little background. After 9/11, it was clear that the Congress was going to be called upon to conduct some form of an inquiry as to what happened. The decision by the leadership was to combine the intelligence committees of the House and the Senate into a single body, for the first time in the history of the Congress that had occurred, for purposes of carrying out this inquiry. The inquiry took the year of 2002. It included interviewing hundreds of witnesses, tens of thousands of pages of documentation, leading up to an over 800-page report, which was submitted in December of 2002. Some 6 months later, the declassified version emerged, and we were shocked to see that an important chapter in the report had not been redacted. That is, as Congressman Lynch and Congressman Jones said, a word or a phrase here or there, but an entire chapter. Now, since that chapter continues to be classified, none of us can talk about it in public. But I think it's fair to say that it is a central chapter in terms of understanding who was the support network that allowed 9/11 to occur. When we saw that this chapter had been eliminated, there was an immediate outcry. Senator Dick Shelby, Republican from Alabama, who had been the chair and was at that time the vice chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, and I issued a statement to the effect that we were intimately familiar with that chapter. We considered it to have no adverse effect on national security, that it was important to the overall understanding of 9/11, and it should be released. We have subsequently been joined in that by others who were involved, including the chairman of the House Committee, Porter Goss, who wishes that he could have been here today to participate as well, and subsequently the Citizen 9/11 Commission's two co-chairs, Lee Hamilton and Tom Kane, have also advocated that these 28 pages be released. Shortly after the declassification process ended, a letter was prepared, signed by almost half of the membership of the United States Senate, bipartisan, including Senator Joe Biden of Delaware, Senator John Kerry of Massachusetts, and Senator Clinton of New York, all calling upon President Bush to release the 28 pages. What have been the consequences of this refusal to release the pages? And let me say, while the 28 pages are maybe the most important and the most prominent They are by no means the only example of where information that is important to understanding the full extent of 9/11 have also been withheld from the American people. So the comments I'm going to make are specifically about the 28 pages, but more generally about a pattern of cover-up that for 12 years has kept the American people from a full understanding of the most horrific attack against the United States in its history. The consequences, in my judgment, are three. One is a denial of the truth. A core question in 9/11 is, did these 19 people act alone, or did they have a network of support which facilitated their ability to carry out a very complex plot? No one who has looked closely at the facts, including the individuals that I just named, have come to a conclusion other than that it is highly improbable that the 19 people could have acted alone. Yet the official position of the United States government has been that they did act alone, and that there is no necessity for further inquiry into the question of whether there was a support network. We're now in the 150th anniversary of the American Civil War, and we've had a national history classroom over the past few years as incidents that were consistent with a date in the current era coincided with a date during that war. One of the pieces of information that we have learned, at least I have learned, is that President Lincoln had a policy throughout the war that every message that came into the government, specifically into the State Department, was a matter of public record on a daily basis. His feeling was that if the support of the American people were going to be maintained in a war which was increasingly bloody, many loss of lives and loss of treasure, that it took the confidence of the American people that their government was conducting itself in an appropriate manner, and that the key to that confidence was disclosure. I wish we applied the Lincoln-esque standard to what happened in 9/11. The second issue is the issue of justice. Some 3,000 members of the families who were lost on 9/11 have been trying for years to get justice through our system for the losses that they have suffered. The position of the United States government has been to protect Saudi Arabia. At virtually every step of the judicial process, when the United States government was called upon to take a position, it has been a position adverse to the interest of the United States citizens seeking justice and protective of the government which, in my judgment, was the most responsible for that network of support. Again, an example from the Civil War. The British had signed a neutrality agreement with the United States that they would not be involved in the Civil War. It was found out subsequently that in fact their shipyards had been building military vessels for the Confederacy. After the war ended, the United States didn't forget. It did not walk away from the negative effects of Britain's perfidy. Rather, it pursued it and finally secured a recognition of what the British had done and some compensation for the consequences of their action. What a difference between the way this country saw itself as a proudful defender of justice for its citizens and what we are experiencing today. The third consequence is the issue of national security. And frequently those who have defended non-disclosure have said this cannot be made available to the American people because it will be adverse to our national security. It will affect methods and sources of information or other information that is inappropriate to be made publicly known. as the two congressmen have just said, they both read the report, not 12 years ago as I participated in writing the report, but they have read it recently and have both come to the same conclusion that we did a dozen years ago, that there is no threat to national security in disclosure. I'm going to make the case today that there's a threat to national security by non-disclosure, and we saw another chapter of that today in Paris. Here are some facts. The Saudis know what they did. They are not persons who are unaware of the consequences of their government's actions. Second, the Saudis know that we know what they did. Somebody in the federal government has read these 28 pages. Someone in the federal government has read all the other documents that have been covered up so far. And the Saudis know that. What would you think the Saudis' position would be if they knew what they had done, they knew what the United States knew what they had done, and they also observed that the United States had taken a position of either passivity or actual hostility to letting those facts be known? What would the Saudi government do in that circumstance, which is precisely where they have been for more than a decade? Well, one, they have continued, maybe accelerated their support for one of the most extreme forms of Islam, Wahhabism, throughout the world, particularly in the Middle East. And second, they have supported their religious fervor with financial and other forms of support of the institutions which were going to carry out those extreme forms of Islam. Those institutions have included mosques, madrasas, and military. Al-Qaeda was a creature of Saudi Arabia. The regional groups such as Al-Shabaab have been largely creatures of Saudi Arabia. And now ISIS is the latest creature. Yes, I hope and I trust that the United States will crush ISIS. But if we think that is the definition of victory, we are being very naive. ISIS is a consequence, not a cause. It is a consequence of the spread of extremism, largely by Saudi Arabia. And if it is crushed, there will be another institution established, financed, supported to carry on the cause. So the consequences of our passivity to Saudi Arabia have been that we have tolerated this succession of institutions, violent, extreme, extremely hurtful to the region of the Middle East, and a threat to the world, as we saw this morning in Paris. So I conclude by saying this is a very important issue. It may seem stale to some, but it is as current as the headlines that we will read today. It is an issue that goes to the core of the United States contract with its people, that the people would give the government the credibility and support to govern. The government would give the people the information upon which they can make good judgments as to the appropriateness of governmental action. It's as fundamental as justice to our people who have suffered by this evil union of extremism and a very powerful nation state. And it is the security of the people of the United States of America. So I again thank the congressmen for their leadership. I hope that they will soon be joined by a rising tide of other members of Congress who recognize the importance of this issue. And then finally, that the President of the United States will declare that he is going to adopt the Lincoln-esque standard of full disclosure and rely on the intelligence and judgment and patriotism of the American people to decide what the appropriate course of action should be. Thank you.
You're able to sit down until we do the question to stand up.
Yeah.
You don't have to if you want to stand up.
Okay, I'll have to stand up with you.
Hi, hello, everyone. Excuse me. Thank you. Excuse me? I will. My name is Terry Strada. I am the national co-chair of the 9/11 Families and Survivors United for Justice Against Terrorism. I stand here today united with members of the U.S. Congress and my fellow 9/11 family members and survivors seeking truth, accountability, and justice for all those that we lost and loved. We all know Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden attacked us on 9/11, but that is only half the truth. We believe the other half lies in the 28 redacted pages of the joint inquiry. 9/11 was an attack of unquantifiable loss, death, and destruction. Over 13 years ago, I never could have imagined my life, the lives of my 3 children, and the lives of my late husband Tom's family could be destroyed and torn apart by terrorists. I could not fathom that our country could be attacked by radical Islamists who have pledged repeatedly and remorselessly to perpetuate heinous war crimes against innocent men, women, and children on American soil. Incredibly, this is the world we live in, and private citizens and Congress must take action against those who are responsible for aiding and abetting the 19 hijackers that murdered nearly 3,000 innocent people on American soil, no matter who they may be, no matter what government they are, no matter what country they come from. Terrorism is pure evil, and so are its planners, ideologies, and their bankrollers. Money is the lifeblood of terrorism, and we must implore our government officials, the State Department, the Department of Justice, and our President to get tough on terrorism financing, to hold accountable those who funded 9/11 and continue to fund Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and countless other terrorist organizations that remain dedicated to plotting future terrorist attacks against our nation. When former President George W. Bush declassified the 28 pages of the joint inquiry, he effectively protected the people who gave financial, logistical aid to at least some of the 19 hijackers while they were here in this country. He effectively denied the 9/11 victims' families and survivors and the American people the truth about who was behind the worst terrorist attack on American soil. By hiding the truth about who financed 9/11, the guilty parties have gone unpunished, free to continue financing terrorist organizations, and as a consequence, we have witnessed the creation of branches of Al-Qaeda, like ISIS, grow at an alarming rate. It has long been reported the subjects of the redacted 28 pages point the finger at Saudi Arabia, who have given billions of dollars to promote Wahhabi Islam, the very ideology that spawned those terrorist organizations and defined their jihadist agendas. Tragically, when those countries have become imperiled by the very monsters they helped to create, they have turned to the United States to protect them, as is the case now with ISIS. We are once again engaged in conflicts against an amoral enemy because we did nothing to prevent the funding of these organizations 13 years ago. This cycle must stop. We must recognize and expose that our true enemy includes the backroom bankrollers who repeatedly enable the frontline terrorists who kill themselves and never act again. We must declassify the 28 pages, expose the bankrolling enablers, and take action against them, or we will continue to face future waves of willing frontline terrorists. Since my husband was murdered, all I have ever wanted is justice. The thousands of victims' families and survivors I represent also want justice for the murder of their loved ones and the pain and suffering inflicted on us. When the Twin Towers imploded, our loved ones were literally torn to pieces and flung from river to river on the streets and on the rooftops of lower Manhattan, just as was done at the Pentagon and in the tragic yet heroic crash in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. They were returned to us in pieces spanning years, or for families like mine, they never came home to a final resting place at all. We want the truth, and to hold accountable those who supported the 19 hijackers and enabled Al-Qaeda. I'm going to repeat myself here. We want justice. We want accountability. We want the truth. To achieve the truth, we must declassify the redacted 28 pages of the Joint Inquiry Report. As you have heard here today, there is no threat to national security to release these 28 pages. so therefore there is no reason to keep them classified. To achieve justice and accountability, we must pass the Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act, JASTA. This is a bill that passed out of the Senate Judiciary Committee without objection on September 11, 2014, and voted out of the Senate in December with unanimous consent. This legislation will clarify existing law and enable victims of terrorism to exercise their right to hold accountable those guilty of giving financial aid and logistical support to terrorists who carry out their heinous acts of murder, death, and destruction here on American soil, and help us achieve the justice we deserve. Where is the outrage? I want to know. That Saudi Arabia, a country that our supposed ally, not only bankrolled al-Qaeda and the worst terrorist attack on American soil, but was also instrumental in implementing an intricate web of operatives in numerous places around the world, including right here in our own country, to carry out a complex plan of bringing the 19 hijackers here to America. To name a few places: Sarasota, Florida; San Diego, California; Herndon, Virginia; Paterson, New Jersey. Where is the outrage that they continue to fund terrorist organizations like ISIS, which is killing, raping, and beheading innocent people at a rapacious rate, while at the same time recruiting here in the West for more new members? And where is the indignation that 9/11 victims, families, and survivors have been denied the right to hold accountable in a United States courtroom the people responsible for the incineration of nearly 3,000 people? We need the 114th Congress to direct President Obama to release, declassify the redacted 28 pages of the joint inquiry, and we also need the 114th Congress to act swiftly and pass JASTA into law. Our national security depends on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Good morning. My name is Sylvia Carver. I'm here to speak on behalf of my sister, Sharon Ann Carver, who was murdered at the Pentagon on 9/11, as well as the other family members. My statement will be brief. I want to make a personal request to the President of the United States to please declassify the 28 pages. The families have the right to know the full story. They have a right to seek justice for their loved ones. They have a right to closure, and we cannot have that closure without the full answer, the full story. The full 28 pages must be released so my family can have closure, as well as all the other 9/11 families. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Abraham Scott. I'm a retired Army officer. I lost my wife, Janice Marie Scott, in the Pentagon, along with the Carver sister. They were in an office that there were over 40 members of that organization that were killed that day. And I stand before you in full support of the initiative of declassifying of the 28 pages, as well as passage of JASTA. And thank you, and God bless each and every one of you.
Amen. Thank you. Let me make one quick comment, then we're going to take questions. You can ask anyone. I wanted the victims the families who are suffering so badly, who just spoke, to be on one side so you can see them and take the picture. Any of you from the press, make sure you get this picture of pain. That's all I ask you to do. This resolution that we have put in to call on the President to do what is right for the American people and the 9/11 families. Senator Graham being here is just absolutely what we need to get the Senate to join us with a companion resolution in the Senate and to hold a news conference. And let's put the pressure on the President. I do not know why, after I read these 28 pages, why there's anyone that is reluctant to release the 28 pages. Stephen Lynch and I have a copy of this letter if you want it before you leave today, wrote the president in April, asking him to declassify the information. He's told the families on 2 separate occasions, I will declassify the 28 pages. That's been in the press. We wrote him a letter in April asking him to please declassify the information. Today, we have not received a response. We have called the White House numerous times. They've been responsive to this point. We're working on a response. We've got to let different agencies look at the response. It is time that the Senate join the House and join the wishes of the American people and the wishes of the 9/11 families. If you would like to ask questions, please just say who you are and which person you'd like to come up, and we'll be glad to answer your questions. Sounds good. So I'll go here. You go. Who'd you like to ask?
Senator Graham, Jeff Steinberg, Executive Intelligence Review. Senator, you mentioned that beyond the 28 pages, there are other materials that have been withheld. I know that there's a situation right now before federal court in Florida, and I wonder if you could say something about that, because I think it is indicative of the idea that this was not something localized to only the issues raised in the 28 pages involving San Diego, but this is a whole other dimension that really is suggestive of the magnitude of what needs to be told to the American people.
Let me just briefly tell the story of Sarasota. It was not until almost 10 years after 9/11 that it became aware that there was a prominent Saudi family, one member of whom had been an advisor to the royal family, living in Sarasota. There were also 3 of the hijackers had done their flight training at a small school near Sarasota. During the period that those 3 were living there, they had extensive contacts with that Saudi family. Less than 2 weeks before 9/11, under what law enforcement described as urgent conditions, the Saudi family left Sarasota and returned to Saudi Arabia, raising the question, did someone tip them off that there was an event about to occur and it would be better that they not be in the United States? Through a press group in Florida, we've been trying to get released the FBI investigation that occurred, which probed the role of the family and the hijackers. The FBI initially said they could not respond to our Freedom of Information request because there was nothing to respond with. There were no documents relative to the investigation. Fortunately, there was a strong federal judge who would not accept that as truth, and he and the plaintiffs pursued. And today, 80,000 pages have been turned over by the FBI to that federal judge in the face of their original statement that there was no information. And that judge has, for the past several months, been reviewing the 80,000 pages in order to make a judgment as to which of those warrant continued classification and which can be released to the public. I cite that as an example of the fact that this is not a narrow issue of withholding information at one place in one time. This is a pervasive pattern of covering up the role of Saudi Arabia in 9/11 by all of the agencies of the federal government which have access to information that might illuminate Saudi Arabia's role in 9/11.
Hi, I'm Joe Weber from Fox News in Washington. I realize the importance of releasing this in terms of giving families closure. On no principle, the fact that 28 pages need to be released, the American public will know. But I sense that your persistence about this suggests that maybe there's more. Do you think that it would impact foreign policy or national changes in national security at all? What's in the details of these 28 pages?
I will respond. My answer would be no. I do not understand how you can have a strong foreign policy when you are trying to hide the truth from the American people. How can your policymakers make foreign policy? That to me is Joe, is just not fair. Because as Senator Graham has said, through the history of America, going back to his point of Abraham Lincoln and the Civil War, that America's strength is the truth. And no, I do not think that this would have any negative effect, I mean, to our foreign policy at all. I think it would strengthen our ability to have a sound foreign policy that would be good for the American people. I don't know if anyone, Stephen or Senator Graham, wants to speak to that or not. Yes, sir.
Patrick Terpstra with the Cox Media Group. I guess for Senator Graham, since we have not seen the 28 pages, and I know you can't give us all that's in there, of course, because it's classified, but can you give us as much information, as precise as you can, as to exactly what it says about the Saudi involvement in 9/11?
The 28 pages primarily relate to who financed 9/11, and they point a very strong finger at Saudi Arabia as being the principal financier. The two congressmen have read the report much more recently than I, and if they have any further comments that they...
I think we would be tiptoeing up to the line of, there's a reason this is classified. I think the proper role for the government would be to have the president declassify the report. Let it speak for itself. I'll just leave it at that.
I think just one quick follow-up. When you say Saudi Arabia, Senator, are you talking about the government of Saudi Arabia, or are you talking about private actors in Saudi Arabia?
Given the nature of the kingdom, I'm speaking of the kingdom. In fact, in the litigation that these good people have been involved with, Saudi, when any institution, whether it's a financial institution, a charitable or religious institution, is raised as a possible co-conspirator in 9/11, the kingdom throws the blanket of sovereign immunity over every entity. So it is a society in which it is difficult to make the kinds of distinctions between public, private, religious that we would in the United States.
We'll get everybody's question.
Great. Stephen Nelson from ES News. A question to sitting Congressman. You have the ability to release these pages with immunity. Have you considered doing that? Might you be able to do that sometime in the near future? The President doesn't declassify?
Walter Jones from North Carolina, I'll speak first. When you have a president, Democrat or Republican, who has the authority to release the declassified information or to determine that that should be declassified, excuse my being confused on that. What we're trying to do is to put pressure on the White House. We're trying to say that the House of Representatives, I don't think it would happen within the House of Representatives. No. This is the president has the authority to declassify this information. And I think that what we're trying to do, we hope with this news conference today that there will be a senator who will say, by God, it's time. Let's declassify the information and put in the same type of resolution that Stephen Lynch and Thomas Massey and I put in on the House side yesterday.
I don't think I can add to that, other than, one of the other hats I wear is I'm the ranking Democrat on the National Security Subcommittee on Oversight. And the proper way for this to become public information is for the president to declassify it. And that's the way our government should work. It's interesting that we are not hearing strong arguments from the White House as to the reasons that they refuse to declassify. It's silence, inertia. So it just, I think we just need to keep on pushing. I think as, we got 50 some odd new members of Congress that just came in. We'll educate them. We will try to make government work the way it's supposed to work. And I agree with the senator and the congressman that this will make us stronger. This will definitely make us stronger. It will, the release of the report will influence our national security policy and to some degree our foreign policy as well.
The lady from, you had a question.
Eleanor Cliff, Daily Beast. For Senator Graham, have you had any interest from any senators, and are you, actively trying to pursue cooperation on this? And secondly, many of the reports say the pages aren't being released because of embarrassment. Embarrassment by whom? Of whom? You could shed a little light on that.
Well, it has been my experience over the 10 years that I was on the Intelligence Committee and chair in 2001 and 2002, that much of what passes for classification for national security reasons is really classified because it would disclose incompetence. And since the people who are classifying are also often the subject of the materials, they have an institutional interest in avoiding exposure of their incompetence. So I believe that it is important that all of the information about foreign involvement in 9/11 be disclosed. In answer to your first question, no. In fact, Congressman Jones and Lynch and I have been huddling on this over the past couple of days. And I will be making contacts with members of the Senate to encourage them to introduce companion legislation.
Okay, let me go. We're going to take, these to be the last 4 questions. Start with this young man, and then I'll come to you in that corner, and that'll be it for the day.
William Hicks, Medill News Service. This is for the 2 representatives. Is there any organized pushback in Congress about this resolution? I know it failed to move forward last year.
The problem is, and I understand this, most members in Congress, we have great respect for each other, forget the party affiliations, we trust each other, but when you're asking someone to sign on a resolution that they have not read, it's pretty tough, really. Of the names that we had last year, everyone but 2 had read the pages. The 2 that did not read the pages said that they trust us enough, and that was all everyone, not just Stephen and Thomas and myself, that they would go ahead and go on the resolution with the hopes of reading. Now let me explain. It's not the easiest thing to read. It's not like going to the Library of Congress. You have to write a letter to the chairman of the Intel Committee, the House Intel Committee, and make a request that you be given permission to go to a classified room and to sit there. You take no notes. You just sit there with somebody watching you read. So it's not the easiest thing to read the 28 pages. You got to really want to push for it, and you're going to demand that you get the right to read it. But we think if the Senator Graham and the families can get some other senators to really put the pressure on, and then you'll have members that will say, well, the issue is the kind that I will do this just for the families, if nothing else. Because the resolution is just very simple. It just says, Mr. President, please do your job. You have the authority to do it.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Walter has said. I would say that, this is 28 pages. I think a lot of folks voted on the health care bill without reading it. But, that was 2,400 pages, so they probably had a good excuse on that one. But, I'm at a point where I'm getting a little frustrated, and it is a cumbersome process. You got to go, you got to write the letter, you got to get permission, you got to sit down. You do have maybe a couple of Intelligence Committee staffers on the other side of the table watching you while you read. From my own experience, after I read the 28 pages, I told the 2 people that were observing me, I said, I'm going to file legislation. I told them, you can go back to your bosses and tell them that after I read the 28 pages, I said I'm going to file legislation to make this public. So that I just want to be completely honest with them. But and I think that's the response that most members will have if they sit down and read this report. So we'll keep pushing on it. But I'm going to try a different tack this time. I'm going to work the floor and just have members take my word for it. You need to sign this. We need to get this disclosed to the American people, rather than asking them, you know, you can read it after it's after it's made public, you know, but kind of like the healthcare bill. You know, I think we're beyond the point where we've been patient enough with folks, and we need to big push in the House, and then with the senators' help, big push in the Senate as well.
We have 3 more, those 4 over there, that'll be it. You're gonna have to cut it off. You can meet with anyone when it's over, but those 4, and that will be it. You. Go ahead with the tan coat first.
Yeah, you know, our standard of truth is the whole truth and nothing but the truth, or else you are lying. Not to release the whole truth is to perpetuate a lie, and a lie about the greatest terrorist attack on U.S. soil. And like any lie, this lie grows like a cancer, and the consequences of what happened in not revealing this perpetuate themselves in things like ISIS, and was mentioned today, the terrorist attack in France. But also, we're in a situation of economic warfare. And we see the kingdom participating in a major way to lower the price of oil, which may harm some of our enemies, but may harm us and may take down our financial system. It is urgent that this be released so that we have a public hearing of exactly the consequences of what these people are up to, because those consequences grow every day and threaten this nation more every day. And I just want to end by saying this, that we really owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to the Congress people here and to the families, because they are the patriots of this republic that have stood for the truth, not only then, but now and in our future, that threaten us directly. Thank you
very much.
Yes. Les Jameson with HR428.org. We are working to help in the cause to generate as much energy to get as possible to get the congressman to read the 28 pages, because after hearing your reactions and how transformed your understanding of 9/11, that alone I think will be a huge accomplishment to move forward. And we recently heard that Congressman Alan Grayson in Florida attempted to get access, it was denied. Could you speak to that, please, and then say what you would suggest as a reaction from the public?
I know that some of us have responsibilities that require top secret clearance, and that might be a situation he might have. I know he was a member, and then he was not a member, and then he got reelected. It may be just a non-continuity of his status, but I think he can repair that. I think he'll have an opportunity to read it at some point. His classification may not have been reestablished when he went in there to read. I've seen that among some staffers. I think each congressional office, including their staffers, have 2 people, I think, that are entitled to top secret clearance, but they've got to go through that whole process. So that may be the situation with Mr. Grayson.
Okay, these will be the last 2.
Carl Golub at jfkvigil.com. I'm a retired U.S. Customs agent. In the fall of 2001, myself and many other agents were assigned to Fresh Kills landfill, where the rubble of World Trade Center 7 was brought, and we were tasked with sifting through WTC-7, the 47-story third tower that collapsed that day, and culling out computer components that other agencies didn't want left in the landfill. And I can just testify from my experience as an investigator that those 3 towers were not brought down solely by 2 airplanes and their jet fuel, that there is abundant evidence of controlled demolition of those 3 towers. And my question is whether these 28 pages will point at all towards that reality and the potential of true false flag terrorism in this event.
So why don't you answer that? I've got an answer too.
My answer is no.
That's it. The 28 pages does not deal with that issue at all. John, and you will be the last.
Okay. Jack Larson, I am thefaceoftruth.com. My question is, I heard before that there was multiple foreign governments that could be actually implicated in the pages. Is it just totally Saudi Arabia, or is there other active governments that could be involved?
I personally think that the report speaks for itself. And there's one thing that needs to be said here. Once these 28 pages are released, the press will do their job. We've got some smart folks out there on the part of the press. They will investigate this, I think there'll be a collective debate and discussion about the implications of these 28 pages. And your question and others will be answered, and that's the whole process here. We'll do a deep dive on this collectively with the full focus of transparency that it deserves. And I think there will be, I'll learn from the debate. Even though I've read the 28 pages, I'm sure there'll be other sets of eyes that will look at that same 28 pages and come up with things that I did not immediately recognize. So, I think all of this is an important understanding process, and that transparency from all these different angles will really enlighten our understanding of this whole terrible and tragic event.
Terry, do y'all want to say anything before we close?
Actually, there's also another organization, 28 Pages of Better, that the American people can access and go on there and learn how to reach out to their congresspeople, their senators, and make the phone calls and move this movement along. And that's another important piece.
I want to thank Senator Graham and the families for being here today. My dear friend and good friend Stephen Lynch, thank you, the press, because the only way we're going to get this done, quite frankly, is your help. You've got to help us continue to beat the drum. We're going to do everything within the House and Senate that we can do with our friends, many of them here today. But when it really comes down to it, it's your interest that will help us get this done. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you.